It gives me a great pleasure to welcome in this historic place those who've never been here. This building was closed and deserted for 14 years. My sister, who is deceased, superintendent schools in Philadelphia, Cleveland, elsewhere, died from urinary tract infection in rural Georgia. Filthy rich, but didn't get the same access to health care, not treated the same by her primary care physician. As you know, I have a clinic to serve this community. Don't charge a penny. We've invested in housing, but I do all of that because I've had great women in my life who have fought for others, who believe that the true measure of a life is not how much you have, but how much you give. This fight for a living wage is in my DNA. My grandfather was the first black foreman at Ford Motor Company. My father organized that foundry, and my grandfather refused to come out, Herb, during the Battle of the Overpass and the Fourth Strike because he thought Henry Ford Sr. was the second coming of Jesus Christ. But my father was a part of the hunger marches with H. Richard Niebuhr and the others who are here when 4 people were trampled and died, and we've still been fighting the same fight. Is that right? Still trying to get dignity for people who work every day with their hands, who toil and struggle. And so we're so pleased to have someone here, as I told her, who could be doing anything other than what she does. My father always said the true measure of a person's life is not how much you have, but how much you give. And Jane Fonda has given everything she's been given, plus some. And it's time for us to stand up and join with her and make certain that people earn a decent, livable wage. Is that right? So we have somebody who's organizing all across the country. I'm not going to mess her name up. She's going to come and she's going to set the tone and then introduce our guest speaker.
Thank you so much, Reverend Sheffield. And wow, super big congratulations, Reverend Sheffield, and to all of you for History Today in Detroit. We're all so proud across the country for this huge new change, history in the making. And that's what I want to talk about, history in the making. My name is Saru Jayaraman. I've been organizing restaurant workers across the country for 25 years. This year, 2026, is the 25th anniversary of 9/11. Can you believe that? On September 11th, there was a restaurant at the top of the World Trade Center, Tower 1, called Windows on the World. And on that morning, 73 workers died, and 13,000 restaurant workers lost their jobs in the months and weeks following the tragedy. And I was asked, as a young woman, as a young organizer, to start a relief center in the aftermath of the tragedy, which we did. We started organizing restaurant workers in New York City, and the first place that asked us to come after New York was Michigan. And we started, restaurant workers called us to Michigan. We started organizing restaurant workers in Michigan, and then all over the country. And everywhere we went, we would ask restaurant workers, what are your top needs and concerns? And they would say, it's my wages, it's my wages, it's my wages. And when we started looking into why do restaurant workers keep talking about their wages, the answer became very clear. The restaurant industry is the largest employer of women and people of color and young people, immigrants, but it's the lowest paying employer in the United States of America, and it has been for generations dating back to slavery. Prior to emancipation, waiters in the US were white men who got actual wages, no tips. They went on strike in 1853 for higher wages, and the restaurant industry started looking for cheaper labor. And after emancipation, they found it. They started hiring newly freed Black women and telling them, you're not gonna get any wage at all. You're gonna get something called a tip. Now, tips had just come from Europe. In Europe, tips were used as an extra or a bonus on top of a wage for a job well done. Since feudal times, aristocrats would give servants an extra tip on top of a wage. But when the idea came to the US, we mutated, we changed the idea of tipping from being an extra or bonus on top of a wage to becoming the entirety of the wage, just to give restaurants the right and ability to hire free Black labor after chattel slavery ended. And we went from $0 for tipped workers in 1865 all the way up to $2.13 an hour, the current federal minimum wage for tipped workers in the United States of America. And do you know what it is here in the state of Michigan? $4 an hour. $4 for not a tiny little population. It's not like this little population over here. It's the largest employer of women and people of color and young people is getting to pay $4 an hour in Michigan. Why? Because powerful restaurant corporations like Applebee's and IHOP, Denny's, Coney Island Diners, they don't want to pay more. They don't want to pay more than $4 an hour. They want you, the customers, to pay their wages for them in your tips. It's the only industry that gets one group of working people to pay another group of working people's wages without the employer paying anything at all. And so we have been fighting for 25 years to raise wages for restaurant workers, but we realized early on that it wouldn't work just to fight for ourselves. We had to fight for everybody. So we started fighting here in Michigan in 2014. We collected 400,000 signatures to raise the minimum wage for all workers, including restaurant workers. That year, the legislature undermined our ballot measure, took it off the ballot. We came back in 2018. We collected another 400,000 signatures. That year, the legislature told the press, we don't want this to go to the ballot because it'll drive the wrong people out to vote. People of color, women, young people, restaurant workers, they didn't want them to vote. So they said, we're going to take it off the ballot, we're going to make it the law, and then we're going to reverse it back after the election. So would you believe in 2018, they raised the wage for tipped workers from $3 to $12 and then back down to $3 after the election. So we filed a lawsuit, and the lawsuit took forever, and we came back in 2022 and we collected another 600,000 signatures to put $15 on the ballot. And the Republicans blocked us from going to the ballot again. At this point, we've collected 1.4 million signatures from Michigan voters to raise wages for workers in this state and for restaurant workers in particular. Finally, July 2024, the Michigan Supreme Court declared everything they had done unconstitutional. And they said our ballot measure was the law of the land. It was 1.2 million workers who got a raise July 2024 to $15 an hour plus tips. We celebrated. We were with Garland Gilchrist at the Charles Wright Museum of African American History. We said Michigan just became the first state to end this legacy of slavery east of the Mississippi, because lots of other states have done it in the West, but Michigan became the first state. We were so happy. And then the story never ends. February 2025, a few Democrats got together with Republicans and rolled back restaurant workers' wages 50%, from $15 all the way back down to $7.50. That's a $2.5 billion pay cut per year for 400,000 restaurant workers. The very workers who had led the fight for 15 for all workers were the ones to get cut out. Why? Because they're the lowest paid, they're the women, they're the people of color, they're the ones who the Restaurant Association doesn't want to pay. The Restaurant Association is like, you can go ahead and raise the minimum wage for everybody else, just leave our people out of it. And so 400,000 workers lost half of their pay in the midst of an affordability crisis, and we are not going to end the story there. Thank God there is something called a referendum process here in Michigan, where once again, we're out there collecting the signatures. We're back there. I want to thank Audrey and Kim and their Living Wage for All t-shirt. Once again, we're collecting the signatures, but this time we don't have to go all the way. Like, we don't have to collect 600,000 signatures. We only need 300,000. We only need half the amount of signatures, because what we're doing is we're canceling that bad bill they passed in February to cut people's wages. We're canceling the pay cut. We're restoring the Michigan Supreme Court victory we won in July 2024. And we're going to win back that $2.5 billion they stole from us. And people are good. That means 400,000 workers are going to get a raise in May. And that's important not just for those workers, it's important for democracy. It's important for democracy because these workers, restaurant workers, they don't vote typically. I got to tell you, when I talk to our members, they're like, what difference does it make? I, work 3 jobs and I earn so little, and I don't see Democrats or Republicans raising the wage. Nobody's raising the wage. So what difference does it make? And so we have to be able to show through the referendum that yes, it can make a difference. Voting can make a difference by actually, you're going to get a raise. You're going to get a raise. Democracy is going to deliver a raise. So we need your help. We need your help to collect the signatures. We need volunteers. And if we get those signatures turned in March, we get the raise in May, and then we can mobilize everybody to vote in November. But this is just the first step. If you see the pink shirts people are wearing and the sign back there, it says living wage for all, because I want to be clear, and the Reverend said it. The truth is, at this point, after all these years of fighting, 15 is not enough to live on in Detroit. In fact, the MIT living wage calculator tells you how much you need to live in every county of the United States of America. And right here in this county, you cannot live, if you have a child, on anything less than $25 an hour. And actually, even in the cheapest county in the United States of America, you cannot live on anything less than $25 an hour. So there is a new fight for 15 in town. It is called living wage for all. It is raising the minimum wage closer to the actual cost of living, which has got to be at least 25, and ending all exemptions, not just for tipped workers, workers with disabilities, or youth. There's another exemption to the minimum wage. That's another legacy of slavery. It's incarcerated workers. There's an exception to the 13th Amendment that allows for slavery in the case of incarceration. And we just had a big win on this in California, where I now live. We actually won a bill because, we had a bunch of wildfires in LA where Jane lives earlier last year. A third of our firefighters in California are incarcerated people who earn 8 cents an hour, saving our lives. And so we got a bill passed last year allowing, finally, incarcerated workers to be paid a full minimum wage. And so we are now saying that is the model. We need to fight for a living wage for all, no exceptions. Because anybody who works in the United States of America, what is the point of having a word minimum if people can earn less? And when FDR first passed the idea of a minimum wage in 1938, the idea was, let's get people to a minimum that meets the cost of living. Except right now, the minimum wage of $7 and $15, that's nowhere near the cost of living. The cost of living has skyrocketed way, way past what corporations are willing to pay people. And it should not be up to them. It should be up to us, the people, of what is the least a worker anybody who works in the United States, anybody who works in Michigan should earn. And I think we all agree across party lines, across race, gender, we all agree if you work, you deserve to earn enough to have just 1 job instead of 3. You deserve to earn enough to have a roof over your head and be able to feed your kids. You deserve a life. And a lot of us who work so many jobs, it feels like we don't have a life. So we've been with the Reverend, a biblical reference. I've been talking about this this is not our David versus Goliath fight. This is Davida and Derica versus Goliath. This is the women of color who work in these industries, who are the backbone of our economy. We deserve a living wage for all. And this referendum, which we're asking you to be a part of, is the first step toward that. And we are so deeply grateful to the Reverend for believing in us, and to Jane for coming here and uplifting this really important fight. Thank you so much for being here. The incredible Jane Fonda.
Hi, everybody. I'm honored to be here. Thank you, Reverend. I'm here because of Saru. I'm here because of this fight. I've been coming here over the years to join her in the fight for one fair wage. I used to bring Lily Tomlin with me. She gave me street cred. Working class white family from Detroit that, helped. I'm sick of being called an outside agitator. I have a lot of connections to Michigan. My second husband was from Royal Oak. Tom Hayden, editor of the Michigan Daily. My mentor was Ken Cockrell. I almost wanted to move here and become an organizer. He used to send me to UAW organizing meetings with women auto workers, and I would watch and I said, I think I want to not go back to Hollywood. I want to stay and be an organizer. And he said, Fonda, the movement has plenty of organizers. We don't have movie stars. You go back there and you start taking your career seriously and making movies you're proud of. So I think of Ken and with a lot of love in my heart, because it was really a good advice. But you heard what Saru said about this fight. To do away with subpar salaries, and they keep coming back, the NRA, not the National Rifle Association, the National Restaurant Association, the other NRA. And they just keep coming back and coming back and striking down the gains we've made. And what does this tell you? This is an important issue. This is a foundational issue, this issue of people who are asked to live on $3, $4 an hour, and hopefully they'll get tips. And what happens for women in this kind of a situation? They have to put up with all kinds of harassment and dangers, because they've got to bring home the money and they have to please the customer, so he'll tip them. This is a woman's issue, primarily. And the other thing that excites me about this issue is the fact that 400,000 workers had their wages stolen by the NRA. If we don't make them good, if we don't get that back, these are 400,000 people that are going to say, well, what has democracy done for me lately? And we need those 400,000 workers to vote. We need them to believe in democracy. And we need the Democratic Party to grow some balls. I was born in 1937. When the New Deal was beginning to really blossom in this country, for white people at least. I only saw my dad. My dad was Henry Fonda. He was a movie star, too. Grapes of Wrath, 12 Angry Men. He put his values into his movies. And I only saw him cry twice. And the first time I was 5 years old, and Franklin Delano Roosevelt had died, and my dad was crying. And I knew from that what Roosevelt did was absolutely critical. And for all of my dad came from Omaha, Nebraska, so we used to spend a lot of time in the middle of the country, what we call flyover country now. It was so different then, and you all know this, at least those who approach my age. Somebody worked in a factory. They could buy a home. They could send their kids to college. They had an identity that they were proud of. And their sons and daughters, but particularly their sons and their grandsons, they're working in restaurants on sub-minimum wages now. The rug has been pulled out from under them. And back in the day, when a factory worker wanted to know who to vote for, he went to his union. Now where does he go? Fox News, maybe evangelical churches. Workers' power has been weakened, and the Democratic Party hasn't been fighting that. And so we have a chance now, because, it's when you're down and out and defeated, that's the time when people like us can get in there and make it happen. And that's what we have to do. And we have to, when we're voting, we have to vote all the way down ballot. Because school boards, sheriffs, county executives, controllers, city councils, state legislators, these are the positions that really make a difference these days. You know, the Republicans were very smart. Remember the Tea Party? Well, I mean, it's still active. Under the radar, they went around the country and took over these down ballot positions. Now we have to do that. We have to think the long game. And so let's get those 400,000 people back into the voting block. And let's force the Democratic Party to stop kissing ass with the corporations and start working for people. And, you know, I'm trying to organize out where I can in Hollywood, because the theory of change right now is this. All governments, regimes, democratic or fascist, whatever, they're all held up by pillars of support. The military, health, education, professionals, financial, art. If you organize within those pillars and weaken those pillars, the regime collapses. So that's what we have to start doing right now, organize within our pillars. So and I forgot why I raised this. That's what happens when you're old and tired. I can't remember why I raised this. Oh, so because I'm trying to organize out in Hollywood, I've been talking to a lot of the people who are really expert on authoritarianism. Because we all have to start understanding from us, we all have to have a common understanding about what's happening. For the first time, at least for white people in this country, an authoritarian clique has taken over our government, every aspect of our government. And they're trying to consolidate it. Haven't quite happened yet. They haven't totally consolidated. And we have to act fast. I love Black audiences because you guys talk back and get involved. So great, man. You know, I lived in Georgia for 20 years, Atlanta, Georgia, and they tried to recruit me into Buckhead. You know, Buckhead is like Grosse Pointe, and they tried to lure me into the churches there. No, I went to a black church, Reverend Durley, because the music was better. I mean, you all know how to sing, and anyway. I'm really happy to be here. I've kind of lost my track of thought. Because it's been one after the other. But we gotta get this referendum passed. And hopefully some of you will volunteer to go out and collect the signatures. I used to do that here with Lily Tomlin on behalf of One Fair Wage. Collect the signatures, get this referendum passed so 400,000 workers can get what they're owed, then they'll start voting because they'll start believing in democracy again. So that's why I'm here. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much.
Don't go nowhere.
Thank you.
Don't go nowhere. Listen. Isn't that nice? Sit down for a moment. Let me just give you what we need you to do. Yeah, those of you come to church, I don't preach without giving you some specific instructions. Now, in this room are some of the most amazing organizers in the country. Manu and I orchestrated the burial of menthol cigarettes in front of the Capitol. She's been involved in that. We fought all over the country. So here's what we're going to do. I told about all my events. I've had Joy Reid here, everybody. We pack this place out all the time, don't we? We're going to have petitions available every event we have. People are going to sign them. We're going to ask everybody here to take some petitions and get this done. Now, Manu and Carrie, stand up. These are political action chairs. We're going to make this happen. And I'm going to say this and we're going to get you out of here. I have the privilege of, being raised under my dad. Two things I promise I'll be very brief. One is Jim Farmer was a good friend of his. And he would come down the street. My dad had a building on 8670 Grand River. Y'all know TULC. And at 10 years of age, Jim gave a speech called What is Politics? And all I remember is he said, politics is the most mundane art, who gets what and how much. And anyone who doesn't want to be in politics wants someone else to decide what they don't have. And at 10, I said, well, why don't you say what they get? He said, because it's not about self-gain. It's about what we need for ourselves. Listen, we're in an era where we need people to understand. Listen now. I've gone all over the country and say this. They love it. It's our money. Spend it on us. Federal domestic relief. We don't like Cuba, but we give them money to use Guantanamo Bay. Y'all ain't talking to me. The only way this country's going to change is for us to stop looking at MSN and CNN and sitting down talking about what they doing to us. We got to do something to them. And here's a chance for us to get started. We're going to get this wage change. My mother made me remember this poem. You'll figure out who said it, but it's appropriate. An ounce of joy to a pound of trouble, crust of bread, a corner sleeping, never to moan because the pains come double. And that's life. That shouldn't be our life. We should live just as well as anyone else. And while we're on the subject, I fly out of Evans Airport. I go to Atlanta, Judge. They're paying people $20 an hour to push wheelchairs. They pay them $8 an hour in our airport in a town that was built by union folks. Y'all ain't listening to me. I'm done. I told the last person, yes, don't come complain about another damn thing to me if you ain't doing something about your freaking self. I'm mad as hell, and I'm fired up. Let's get these petitions done. Let's get this overturned. Let's make certain that people have a livable wage. Somebody say, thank you, Jane.